Welcome back to another segment of Behind the Scenes of the Waltons. Today I'm going to be taking up more viewer questions in another segment of Ask Judy. If you enjoy these, please do hit like and subscribe. Next one is from Several Degrees of Separation, who asked, do the large studios generally have trap doors in the floors that lead to small underground holding rooms for scenes when someone is coming up what would be from the lower floor? I can't think of a specific scene from the Waltons, but earlier today I was watching an episode of Hogan's Heroes, and there is a scene when several of the characters come up through a tree stump to ground level. Or do they just use risers that are 4 or 5 feet from the studio floor? I think both happen. I know on our soundstage because the house wasn't 2 stories in terms of the interior sets, we were on a soundstage, so all the rooms were sort of on the same level. So when you were in the upper hallway, if you'd see somebody come up the stairs to what would be the upstairs bedrooms on the house, you could see people come up the stairs. So they had literally like dug a small hole in the floor of the soundstage. And then they built the stairs that went down and kind of turned a corner. And there was just sort of a dirt square there. So if you went down the stairs and turned the corner where you couldn't see the stairs anymore, you were just sort of standing in a little dirt area. So clearly they could dig out like that. But in that case, because all the bedrooms, they didn't want to have all those like up on a riser, digging that floor out made sense. But depending on if there was a basement scene, a whole basement area, chances are they would just create that as a separate set or, raise, as you said, raise the things above it. So I think it ended up being a bit of a combination of both in that sense. These questions are from Jack Kirby, who had some questions sort of about editing, and I'll do my best to answer them. He also said, it's not Monday without your broadcast, and if it helps, you turned me from stargazing to people understanding. I stopped seeing actors as stars, but as people playing parts, struggling as we all do to navigate life. So thank you for being a good teacher about that, and you did it by being yourself. That's really sweet. I really appreciate that. So on to your editing questions. I'll do my best. I was thinking about editing for some reason, and they have that piece of hardware, I think you're referring to the slate, that you use in front of the camera to indicate the scene. I was wondering, is that film for the editors so they can keep track of the scene? Yes, it's for the editing process, because it's also designed to help with the syncing of the sound with the camera, because the camera doesn't have any sound connected to it. So you could shoot with the camera and it could just be silent. It would be silent. So the sound recorder is working separately, and the combination of the audio of him saying, of hearing rolling and camera and action, and then the sticks, and they're now digital, so you also see time counts on it. So it syncs with the film, and that was like, they would keep track of all that so that for the script supervisor, and it would be logged in there, like what scene number and what take it was, and whether it was a wide shot or a close-up, and all of that information then goes to the editors when they're putting the pieces together. So yes, it is for editing purposes. With the master shots, wide shots, how does an editor know which shot is for which scene? So on the slate, it has the scene number, and then it goes through a lettering system. So if you were on scene 10, so if it just said scene 10 and then what take it is, take 1. So then they'd go on and they'd change the slate and it would say take 2, and they'd shoot it. And then when they got a print, then they would move on. If they were saying, good, now we're in the kitchen table and we're going to do a 2 shot of John and Olivia. So that would be scene 10A, because A now becomes that 2-shot of John and Olivia. And then it would be take 1, take 2, take 3, whatever. Let's say they had a print on take 3. So that would be the only take they would print. So the editor would know that 10A was this 2-shot. And then maybe they went into a close-up of John Boy. So that would be scene 10B. And so it would go like that, with the letter that would indicate it was part of the same scene, but a different camera shot. And so all of that would be documented, and then the editor would get all of that information. And then you said if an editor spots a glaring mistake, does he make note of it, avoid the shot altogether, or splice it in and alert a producer or director? That's a good question. I don't know that I have an answer to that. I think they probably make a note of it. They might edit it in, but make a note and go, do you want to use that? Or they might cut around it and go, well, okay, well, let me see what I can use that doesn't have that glaring mistake, which is most likely what they would do. Say, oh, shoot, I can't use that, so I have to go back to the wide shot, or I have to go back to, if they've done over the shoulders as well as close-ups, they might cut into the over the shoulder to avoid that error that was missed. Somebody went by in the background and nobody caught it. So yeah, they can. That's why you want enough different options within a scene. If you shot it all in one, then you're stuck. You have to use a take. And so sometimes if you see mistakes in shows, it could be that was the only choice, and they have to live with it. And then, how does music back in the day get edited in? I think you guys have separate film for sound and audio and blend it together. This is true. So the sound would pretty much be the dialogue, and then music would be done later. So they would edit together. The initial edits would all just be, the audio from the recording of the actors, and then what was filmed. So then they would start layering things like sound effects. That screen door squeaking if you needed it, or a dog barking in the background, or just the ambient sound that made it come to life more, because it's very dry without any extra sound. And then so that would be put in, or, the sound of the car starting, or horn honking, or, just things that got put in after. And then the music scoring, usually the composer would sit and watch the film, and there'd be, time points where, the sound's going to come in. So that would be all done as its own sort of tracks, and then those would be added to it in post-production. So hope that answers some of that. I'm not, I did not have a chance to really sit in on any editing on our show, so I'm not as familiar with how all of that worked. Now I have a question from Kim Cordes, who said, I was wondering if you could talk about the life of a director when they were hired to direct an episode of the show. I think, according to Ralph Sinensky, he said that, he might have a certain number of episodes he'd agreed to, but he didn't always know what episodes they were going to be. I know that the actual shooting of an episode took 6.5 days, but how much time did the director have to prepare between the time he or she was hired when the actual shooting began? So he couldn't prepare until he had the script, and the script he might have a couple of weeks before, maybe 3 weeks before, but maybe more like 2. So he technically had about a week of preparation. So if he had the script earlier, he could start doing his own homework. But he was supposed to have like a week of pre-production, and that during that time was when he would make his choices about how he was going to film it and any special equipment he might need. Did he want a crane? Did he want to talk to them about being able to use another location where we'd have to leave the studio, which was always cost more money. So that had to be sort of worked out. And having a meeting with all of the different departments about technical things, like what props did he need? What sets did he need? Any costuming notes, any anything for any of the art department, stuff like that. And then when the actual shooting began, what types of things did they need to work on and to plan for in advance of the actual production? So yeah, you just want to know that on the day you're going to be filming, everything you need is there. If they need to have vehicles there, do they need to go rent any special vehicles, any of the casting that needs to be done for actors? Do we need any animals in this episode? Are there any sets that need to be built and set dressed and all of that? So the construction and art department had to have that information. Are we going to use Godsey Store? So does that have to be a lot of stuff stayed in Godsey Store, but they would do a walkthrough and a special kind of just checking up on the set dressing or refilling the candy. Things were in their proper place. So all of that would happen. The wardrobe department, if they had to get guest actors in for costume fittings and things like that, the casting department had to know what the requirements were for the casting. So they would go through department by department in these production meetings and through the script to go, okay, we're in scene 1. What do we need for scene 1? So they would have those kinds of production meetings prior to the filming, so that the day of the filming, you show up. And then the director does their own homework about walking through the sets and saying, okay, we're in the kitchen. Where am I going to want, based on the action of the scene, how do I want to stage this? So where am I going to want to put the camera in, and what different shots am I going to want? So, they would make their own notes about, I'm going to use a wide shot, so a master shot here, and I'm going to want a 2-shot over here. So all of those types of things, the director would work out all of where the camera's going to go and what the shots are going to be. So that's all of their homework. Thank you for joining me for this segment of Ask Judy, and thank you for your creative questions. And if you have a question, go ahead and put them in the comments below any video. I look forward to seeing you next time for another segment of Behind the Scenes of the Waltons and more of your questions in another Ask Judy. Thanks for watching.